Welcome to Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt here, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. We always talk about Pizza Quest as being mostly about pizza, but we also say, as any of you who have visited our site know, that, and I call it the 11th commandment of Pizza Quest is that it's more about the quest than it is about the pizza. And today I'm going to explore more on the quest side with one of my oldest and best friends, Alan Cahn, who's coming to us from Portland, Oregon. And I'll do a very short recap of how Alan and I are connected, and I'm going to let Alan sort of take it from there. We go back amazingly, almost exactly 50 years to when we worked together in Boston. Right. Well, you were at MIT, I believe, at the time. I'm pulling a lot of stuff out of memory because, 50 years, a lot's happened since then. And we became very, very good friends there. He was at MIT. I had just left Boston University, and we helped start one of the early vegetarian organic restaurants, maybe really in the country, but it certainly was one of the very first for Boston. And we had a little restaurant collective called Route 1 Cafe, and it was spelled ROOT, which will give you an idea of what this thing was all about. It was a cosmic adventure for us. Route 1 Cafe was a gathering of kindred spirits who were, for lack of a better word, seekers, people who were all looking for some meaning in life. And we found it collectively through food. And the rest was history. Since then, we did a lot of things together, and then we all kind of went off on our different individual journeys. And today, after 50 years, and of course, Alan and I have stayed together throughout all this time. I feel like he's my brother from another mother. We've stayed in touch, but I want to give you a chance, Alan, to kind of help everybody hear a little bit about your journey from the restaurant days where we were, doing the vegetarian organic sprouts and all the stuff that was new and is now becoming very hot and trendy today, 50 years later. And then what happened after I went in my direction and you kind of continued on in yours? Fill us in.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so it's actually 51 years because we met right before I turned 21. So it was
That's right.
1971.
I keep
And that-
thinking this is 2021 because I'd lost a whole year in there with COVID.
yeah, it's great. So, at age, I don't know, 16, 17, or 18, I'm the youngest of three kids, grew up in New York. And, when my older sisters introduced me to not medical, to smoking weed. There was no such thing as medical
It wasn't
marijuana.
called medical that
It
back
wasn't medical back then. It was a drug.
then.
And so from the moment I experienced that there were other ways of looking at reality than the ways I had inherited and learned from my surroundings and my parents, I'd been on a quest to support others in having a way of experiencing and viewing the world that would leave them fulfilled, that would leave them present to more possibilities than our rational brains could lead us to. And at one point, there was that whole deal of you are what you eat. So we thought we could eat our way into enlightenment, and hence the
Right.
Route 1 Cafe. And then, as you know, I went off and lived in a Zen monastery, and then I came back, and we both got involved in a mystical Christian order. And for me, that was a clear choice because it was furthering my quest of how do I support and empower people. And I didn't see people in the US becoming Zen Buddhists, although a lot of them are now.
Right.
I thought
We were always way ahead of our time.
I thought Christianity would be a better vehicle. Uh, so I was involved with that. You became a brother. I became a lay minister, was teaching Bible classes, and in 1976, while you were in a monk, I took a training called the S training, which, part of the reason I took it was several folks in the order had taken it and
That's right.
spoke highly of it. So that was enough of a endorsement for me. And when I sat in that program in December of 76, I said this approach to another way of viewing life, to a transformative way of viewing life, was for me. So I eventually wound up working with that organization for 32 years,
Mm.
rose to near the top, led programs around transformational programs around the world, um, coached people, developed leaders, designed programs, managed it. And in 2014, I left and decided to look at, I said, I'm starting my third chapter.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
know, what's the third act? Actually, not chapter, act. What's the
I
third
call it the
act?
same thing, my act three. Yeah, yeah,
What's
exactly.
act? What's act three? So
'Cause
I'm now
yeah,
9 years, 8 years into act three.
so you're
And
9 years ahead of me. I'm just starting my act three now.
yeah, well, maybe you're 10. Maybe you're going to live 10 years longer than me. So who knows?
Who
So
knows?
and so now I'm coaching, consulting, designing trainings and programs, and continuing to fulfill that same urge I had that brought me to living in a Zen monastery, which is how do we make possibility available to others? Yeah.
And one of the little catchphrases we have for Pizza Quest is a journey of self-discovery through pizza.
Yeah.
And really self-discovery is the key, phrase there. And I think that's what brought you and I together right from the beginning. And in a sense, one of the reasons why we stayed in touch with each other and stayed close through all these years is that we've been on this parallel journey of self-discovery, but also driven to try to help other people
Yeah.
uh, find their self-discovery. So
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about some of the things that, aside from getting into the weeds of, of the seminars that you put on and everything, which you can't really recreate in a little Zoom thing like that, but talk about some of the principles that have guided you and the things,
Sure.
the life lessons that you've come away with.
Great. At a certain point, I said I want to come up with what are the underpinnings of what I'm offering, uh, uh, and I think I came up with six. So the first one is no one is stuck being who they wound up being. We
Mhm.
all wind up being a particular way. There's a certain genetics, there's cultural influence, societal influence, our gender. There's so many, but we wind up, the neuroscientists, we wind up with brain patterns. And
Mhm.
yet the neuroscientists tell us that there's plasticity, so we can create new patterns. So that's number one.
So let me just make sure I'm clear about this. So what you're saying is no matter who we are and what we become at this moment, we're not stuck.
We are not. The future, another way of saying it is the future is not all, I'm not a determinist. The future is not written. We get to co-write it, you
Mhm.
know?
Okay.
I wouldn't say write it because so many folks write plans for the
Yeah.
future and they never happen, but we get to co-write it. Yep. So
And
that's number one. We're
okay.
not stuck
Even in
being,
Act Three, we can continue to become more.
even with people who have dementia, they still can create new brain patterns.
Wow.
As
Okay.
long as our brain is, we are alive, new patterns are capable of being
All right.
created.
Awesome. So that's a great first premise.
That's number one. Number two, none of us are related to reality the way that it is.
Okay. That one's the little bit more abstract. I mean, none of
Yeah,
us are related to reality. Did you say?
yeah. None of us can perceive reality. We are perceiving reality. So we're perceiving it through our senses, through our
Mm,
experience, through our moods, but we're not related to reality as it is, which is why two people watch the same thing and come away with a different story.
I see. So everybody's experiencing their own reality.
Totally, and which we see nowadays, and everybody's claiming it's, and I don't even call it their own reality because I think that weakens what reality is. There is a reality out there,
Mm-hmm.
but we have no direct access to it except through our experience and our senses.
All right. So now I'm hearing a little bit of that Zen background.
Exactly,
All
exactly,
right. All right.
exactly.
And by the way, I remember the day you went into that Zen monastery. I
Exactly.
drove you there. I dropped you off.
You and Shanti drove me there, exactly.
And even just throwing out the name of our close and dear friend Shanti already tells everybody where we were at back in 1972 or three, whatever that year when we took you to the Zen Center in Rochester, New York.
Exactly. Yeah. So another principle, so that's principle two. Another principle is that a human being is not their thoughts, their views, their feelings, their body sensations, their history, their actions, their possessions, or anything else.
What are they?
Good question.
Hey, that's my best thing. I get to ask questions.
You know, that question has been asked for thousands of years.
Yes, exactly.
Who am I? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah,
am
and
I?
and even in theology, there's a whole theology built on what reality is not, as opposed
Yes,
to God is not this, God is not that, as opposed to trying to say what God is.
yeah, yeah. And as you know, great questions are much better than great answers.
Yeah,
So to live in the question, who am I? Not like, oh, I don't know who I am, but like an inquiry. Who am I?
yeah,
Is a real opening. Who am I going to be today?
yeah.
Who am I going to be today? So, a third principle is it's possible, or fourth, I guess, it's possible to live our lives as our speaking.
As our speaking.
Speaking.
So
So,
as
as our, words create.
I say,
Old Testament, New Testament, either one. In the beginning was the Word.
yeah, yeah,
Or how did God create? God spoke. So
uh-huh,
we
uh-huh,
get to create. We get to create our future through our speaking first.
uh-huh. So we
First.
can articulate, we can actually
We,
create our reality and our future by actually finding the right words or just saying it.
well, a few different things. There's that sort of speech act that creates is called declaration.
Mm,
So there's description and then there's declaration.
uh-huh. Okay.
Mostly what we're doing with our speaking is describing,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but then we get stuck with what we describe. So when we say to ourselves, "Oh, I'm so dumb,"
Hmm.
are we
Hmm.
describing or we're creating or are we doing both
Both. Yeah. Right. Right.
at this very same time without being present to how much power our
Uh-huh.
speaking has?
Okay. Okay. I'm getting into focus here with this now. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you say that our country, this country, the United States, maybe there's people listening from other countries, the founding document is the Declaration of Independence.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those folks, they were all men at that time, unfortunately, but that's the way it was. We say all men are created equal. That's a declaration.
Uh,
There was no evidence of that.
right.
Even after they said it, though. So they are declaring, they are creating a future, which then we either live consistent with or not.
Yeah. They declared a future that totally changed the world, but we're
Totally.
still spending 200 years later, we're still trying to catch up to that declaration.
And that's what's powerful about a declaration if you're committed to walking your talk.
Hmm. Okay.
Most people, as you and I know, just talk their talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then everybody sees the discrepancies between their actions and their words. And we get scared.
Right.
Our brains are wired to detect inauthenticity. So when we're in the presence of someone who's bullshitting, sorry,
Mhm.
maybe that should be bleeped out, but or someone, our brains sense whether people are authentic or not because
Yeah.
they're wired to help us survive. So we sense, and as someone who did a fair share of just talk,
Mhm.
that I wasn't embodying or
Uh-huh.
walking, I know we're capable of both.
So it sounds like if I can just connect the dot here, then that this idea of authenticity is a very important concept right there.
Completely impossible to live an invented life, a created life, a created future without having authenticity. Impossible.
Mm.
So our words can create
Hmm.
a future, and then it's up to us, The two words are authenticity and integrity.
Mm.
Will we honor ourselves as our word? So a lot of what I do with individuals now and companies and teams and couples is I have them create a future. You could call it a mission or or a purpose or an intention, or for an individual a calling. So my mission, my calling, my
Yeah.
purpose is all hearts are full, all beings are enlightened.
And that's so, in other words, you're declaring that is your mission
I'm
and help.
declaring that that's who I am.
That's who you are.
I
And
am who I say I am.
uh-huh.
So that's who I am. Then it's up to me at every moment to hold myself accountable for, am I acting true to my mission, to my purpose? And if I'm not, and I'm not always,
Yeah.
I
But who is?
correct. I correct.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I get aware of it quicker and quicker and quicker and intervene and correct, clean up the mess that I made, and get back on the quest that I'm on, which is to stay true to my purpose 24/7, even in my dreams.
And is that why people come to you as a coach to help them stay on course, on
Well,
mission?
for many, it's to first create a mission or a purpose, because most people, this is going to sound terrible, and it is, the only reason they wake up in the morning is because they didn't die in their sleep. They
Yeah.
don't wake up with a purpose, or they wake up with things to do,
Uh-huh.
not with something or some way to be.
Mhm.
You and I are called human beings,
Yeah.
and yet we've never taken courses. Well, you have probably in being. We've taken courses in doing,
Ah,
not being.
there you go.
I think the more accurate name for us is we're human doings.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so part of your work is to help people get back in touch with the being part.
The being. What is the being of human being? And or what what's the soul of their company that they're going to stay true to? Yeah.
So you actually will work with groups and companies and businesses as well as individuals. Yeah,
Large
try to help
com-
them find that.
large companies, medium-sized companies,
Mm.
leaders, and yeah, or right now, I'm in the same stage of my life that you are, age-wise, Peter.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and my wife, who I've been married to Catherine for 42 years, 43 years, she's retired. So I decided to work a little less, even though it doesn't seem like work what I'm doing. So we have more time that we can spend together. But
Awesome.
so I'm very selective about who I work with, and but it's folks who are up to something, or folks where I just sense this this would be I can fulfill my purpose by being their coach.
Well, I know that you spent many years, training and developing, the methodologies and everything else that you are sharing with your clients in your life with
Yeah.
others through the many years that you spent in the training, starting with Werner Erhard and
Yep.
moving on to Landmark and all those the seminars that you actually led for others. And
Yep.
now you're out there individually, in a sense. And then of course we all had a life before that. I went through a parallel thing, learning what I learned, by being in seminary and being a brother and
Yes.
eventually going back out into the world. And now we both live independently in the world,
Yes.
trying to tie together and connect all the things that we've learned. So is what you're doing? And we'll just sort of end this segment when we talk about this and then come back, because I want to hear more about your life with
Yep.
Catherine and we'll just continue to explore this. But what differentiates how you work now, and say some new things that you've added into your repertoire that you were able to kind of extract from your many years of training as a seminar leader?
That's great. So what's new is this living true to your purpose. Uh, what's new is the work of how the brain works and what does it take to live true to a purpose. So, when I was involved with that group that you mentioned, Est and Landmark, we pretty reliable could have people have an experience of something bigger,
Yeah.
Pretty reliable, not 100%, but pretty reliable.
No, you had a track record, a powerful track record
Yeah,
of people leaving there going, something happened. I don't know
something,
what it was, but
something
something.
happened.
Yeah, yeah,
Where I think we failed there, and I don't mind saying it, is giving people the tools to live true to it. So we kept having them want to come back for more, for another experience, another experience, another experience, rather than giving them the tools to live
I
it.
see.
And in my view, and the view of neuroscientists,
Yeah.
which is shaped by three things to create sustainable change.
Mhm,
Just three. One is a desire to, a
mhm.
wanting to, an intention to, something like that. And you and I know that just having intention is not enough, which is why the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah. But certainly there have been, what would you call them, transformation speakers who have built their entire career on the intention side.
Just intention.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. The second is rituals, practices, actions.
Uh-huh.
This is where authenticity. What are the rituals, practices? Because every time you repeat an action, that neural pathway is getting strengthened.
I see.
And then the third, which is why you joined in order and why I joined a different group, is
Yeah.
you need an environment
hmm
that supports you
hmm
taking those actions. And it could be made up of other people. It could be made up, I have a meditation cushion in my office and in my bedroom
Uh-huh.
that's in my environment to
Yeah.
support me in doing that. And maybe that's a good place to stop for right now.
I see. Yeah. So just to wrap this up, I'm thinking, okay, so one is you have to desire, you have to want to have that, and you know from experience that you can bring people to a place of what I'll call awakening to that reality, to that I want to be different, that I want to be in this new reality. Two is you need practice with
Practice, ritual, action. All three are saying the same thing.
way to create patterns and establish the new grooves in your being
Uh,
to
Otherwise, you are just a legend in your own mind.
which is a lot where a lot of people live. And then the third part is I like this part because it kind of ties into what Pizza Quest has been all about is that we recognize that there is this tribe of kindred spirits. I
Yeah,
sometimes call them the pizza freaks or the
yeah,
fire freaks or the breadheads. We have many different tribes that we all kind of share our lives with, but that there's something that is in common that helps to support each of us on our individual journeys.
yeah. And by the way, you are a legend, Peter. I was in Toronto just up until last night in Canada working with a client, and he brought in his young one of his assistants who's getting his MBA. We were talking about all sorts of things, and all of a sudden we're talking about the restaurant, and I mentioned your name. He said, "You know Peter Reinhardt?
Oh, no.
He wrote the book. He wrote the Bible on making bread."
Yeah.
This guy's 26, 28 years
I love
old.
it. Who knew? Who knew back then when you and I were cooking sautéed vegetables and brown rice, and we didn't even make our own bread. We made banana bread together, but we never made our bread. We bought our bread from these hippies.
Corners of the
Banana,
mouth.
yeah,
Corners of the
yeah,
mouth.
Corners of the Mouth Bakery, but it was all going into us, and what stuck with me took me down this direction, but who knew that bread would be sort of I wouldn't say it defines me. I'd say, but based on what you were saying earlier, it's part of who I have become.
It's an opportunity. It's a pathway to really contribute what you're here to contribute to others, which is more than bread.
Yes, and that's what I want to talk about in part two when we return is because there's a saying that says all I write a lot about food, but there's a saying that says all writing about food is always about something else. And I want to talk
Brilliant.
about what that something else is when we come
Beautiful.
back here in Pizza. So we'll be back in part two with Alan Cahn. I'll call him my transformation brother and mentor. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the other something else you taught me or you turned me towards years ago, the works of Bandler and Grinder, who were
Sure.
were they neuroscientists, or they who this
Well,
is
they
big
were not neuroscientists. They started something called neurolinguistic programming.
neurolinguistics. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about all that in part two when we come back with
Yeah.
Alan Cahn on Pizza Quest. Welcome back to part two of Pizza Quest today and Pizza Talk with Alan Cahn, joining us from Portland, Oregon. Alan, we were talking about your work in helping people discover who they are and how to live their full life. But you mentioned, I think you said there were six principles, guiding principles that define sort of your methodology or your approach?
Yeah, six, and it's interesting that you say discover, Peter, because I'm not sure what the right verb is for what I'm actually doing, and I tell
Yeah.
people that I don't know if they're discovering something that's already there because we're born with this inner sense of who we are,
Uh-huh.
or if it's we're born tabula rasa, it's a blank canvas, and they're creating who they are. I don't know which is the accurate verb, but I
Uh-huh.
do know landing on it and
Yeah.
then staying true to it is the key to living a fulfilling life, because then your life is being organized by an intention, like a direction that you can keep going on forever rather than the circumstances that we find ourselves in that we have no control over. The way I like to define it is it's like a company or a couple or an individual. You're going east, and you could go east forever.
Uh-huh.
You're going east, and then at any moment you can look, am I going east, or am I going northeast or southeast, or am I standing still? And
Uh-huh.
then you can true yourself up. So my mission in life, what my not my mission is to live true to my purpose, but my vocation in life
Yeah.
is helping people identify, or organizations, their direction, and then helping them have the tools to live true to it. Yeah.
So just to recap, what were those six guiding principles that you
Yeah,
mentioned in part one?
they vary on the day. So,
Okay. All right.
yeah. So when
And
I
with my memory, it always varies anyway. So
so when I originally created it, I liked the idea of four pillars.
oh,
So
four
I
pillars.
called it the four pillars. A human being is not their thoughts, their views, their feelings, their
Mhm.
body sensations, their history, their actions, their acquisitions, or anything else. They're
Ah,
not a thing.
ah,
Human beings do not have direct access to reality. It's always filtered through our perceptions.
uh-huh. Okay.
One I didn't say earlier, but is fundamental. Our brains are always adding a narrative to everything that's going on, whether we're present or not.
Often based on past
Always,
experiences.
always based on past
Okay.
stuff.
So we're always kind of playing catch up. We're never living in the moment then.
Never,
Okay.
never.
All
And
right.
then the fourth one, it's possible to live your life as your word.
Right. And that's a very powerful concept.
Yeah, so those are the four principles. Then some, what do you call things, ancillary
Huh?
principles are no one. Given that, you can make some conclusions. No one is stuck being who they wound up being.
Hmm. That's
No
right. Yeah,
one
we
is
talked
stuck
about that.
being who they
Yeah.
wound up being. Yeah.
So it's always possible to not just reinvent and recreate who we are, but to become who we our most authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah. You could say you and I are on a path of becoming.
On a path to becoming. Well, that's pretty powerful, very metaphysical as well
Yeah.
as I don't want to say metaphorical. It's metaphysical.
Yeah.
And so I could see, I know from my own experiences and from and knowing the kind of work that you've done in seminars and stuff that you can bring people to that moment of aha
That's right.
I call awakening to the fact that it's not what I thought. It's not what I thought it was. I'm not who I thought I was. But then how do you keep people then once they've had that awakening, how do you help them strengthen the muscles and the life patterns to
Good.
actually experience it more and more in the moment?
So it's so great. Everything you said is brilliant. As you know, you and I could have started a business together years ago.
Sometimes I wish we had.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're still there's time. And it would have been great
Yeah,
and fun.
yeah, it would be. It would have been fun. Well, you and I could get lost in how much fun we had back then and how we were going to
Exactly.
always keep having that fun. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm vividly remembering some of the fun times right now.
Right, right, right.
That's another podcast. Okay, so then we talked about three principles, right? Of change, of fundamentals of change. One, having that intention. So some people have the aha experience, and I'm not putting anybody down, but my observation that, and then what do they go for? Let's create another aha experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Then let's create another
They
one.
get addicted to the ahas.
To the ahas rather than to the living of the ahas.
Okay, that's I think really important. Yeah.
Yeah. So if to live those ahas, you need the intention, the desire, the wanting to live it.
Hmm.
You need to then come up with practices, rituals. You had rituals in your community
Yeah.
just to keep you connected to what you were committed to staying connected to.
Right.
Whether, I'm remembering I was leading a transformational program in Israel, and on the day off, before we had the completion session, I went with a dear friend to Egypt, and we went to the Sinai Desert,
Uh-huh.
and we're driving back just for one day. We
Yeah.
flew there to a lot, negotiated with some Bedouin taxi drivers, which mean they had old jalopies, spent the
Yeah.
day along the Red Sea, then negotiated
Yeah.
with a driver to take us back to Israel to fly back to Tel Aviv. On the way back, this beautiful, could have come out of a movie. The sun is setting on one side, golden desert, the water's on the other side, narrow road, this guy's speeding, stops the car, takes out his prayer mat, and starts praying by the side of the car while we're sitting in the back seat.
Ah.
I'm like, okay, pretty cool. Comes back in, and I said to my friend, I said, ask him, what was that like for him? And she asked him in Arabic, and he says, oh, it was so important that I did that. He
Mm.
said, ever since you two got in the car, I'm thinking, I didn't charge you enough money. I'm going to have to drive back empty because no one's going to want to come back. I'm going to miss having dinner with my wife and my kids. This was a mistake. He
Oh,
said, the moment I prayed, I realized I was doing the will of Allah.
wow. Wow.
And I said to myself, whoa. So those praying 5 times a day is the practice, the ritual to stay connected
Mhm.
to that which is bigger than oneself.
Yes. Yes.
And you and I used to talk about, I think we talked about this, when church bells, people think they went off to tell you the time. No, they went off to remind you to connect to something bigger than yourself.
Yes, exactly. And that's because that's been my theme, for in all my books underneath the plot of bread and pizza and everything else is that it's all about connectedness. I always say that the theme of my books is connectedness, which you just described perfectly. And I think we talked about this too. I've shared this that somewhere along the line I learned that the word religion, which we always kind of put out there as some kind of a driving force, is that actually literally means to be connected to. Religio means to be connected to. And once I heard that, the bells went off. The
Yeah.
bells went off. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the coaching I do is with nonprofits, and two of the nonprofits that I coach, one is called Love is My Religion.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful, and
Nice.
they're all about helping folks with every month they gather people who have divergent views
Hmm.
and train them in how to listen to each other,
Wow.
not get anything resolved,
Yeah. Yeah.
not convince anybody,
Yeah.
just hear each other,
Wow.
accept each other. And the other is called Love is Greater Than Hate, which is about ending violence, specifically violence against women.
And are
Yeah.
these organizations or movements that are happening in this country, around the world?
Yeah,
Or
one's headquartered in Wisconsin, which was started by a man named Buck Blodgett after his it makes me cry, 19-year-old daughter was murdered in her bed in their home.
oh my God.
And at the sentencing of the friend who killed her,
Uh,
he forgave the guy
wow.
in the courtroom, said, I hate what you did, but I forgive you. And the whole town around that started a movement. And it's now a nonprofit, and I've been coaching them for the last 5 years, called Love is My Religion. And
Wow.
he has workshops that he delivers in prisons and in other places. He's a chiropractor that's all about love is his, sorry,
Yeah.
love is greater than hate. The other group is in Seattle, Love is My Religion. I confuse them. Sorry, you guys, if you're listening. Love is My Religion is a wonderful man, and some colleagues. They were just sick and tired of religion being a divisive force rather than a coming together force. So they started a group called Love is My Religion. Yeah,
Well, it sounds like they both have emerged from a common insight into reality, into the reality of being,
you
which
got it.
is this power, the power of love, and how it connects you to something greater than yourself.
And now, like you were talking about at the end of the last session, and now what they want to do is give it away.
Aha. That's sweet.
They
That's
want to
nice.
give it
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
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 So
Is
that's
is
like
that is that a kind of a universal truth that when people find something powerful like this, that it's a natural urge then to want to give it away, as opposed to to own it or
yeah,
capitalize on it or this and that?
yeah. I don't know whether it's natural or whatever, but it seems key.
Yeah.
You if you're going to have a great, fulfilling life, if you're going to have one, you have to see yourself as part of a whole rather than see yourself as an individual. You're part of a fabric, you're part of a whole, you're part of a community, and you want to discover what's your unique contribution to the whole.
Yeah.
I say you're either at any moment, you're either contributing or consuming.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and this seems you and I know, and people listening know. What is it? What's the saying? It's better to give than receive. Why
Yeah.
the heck? You feel so good when you've given somebody something that they really love.
Right. I
Yeah.
think some hippie writer way back when, I'm not sure who was a poet, somebody said something like, and this goes back to this 1970s or so. I read something that was you're either contributing or you're sucking all the air out of the room.
Yes, exactly. Same principle.
Or I think the other term they used was you could be an energy giver or an energy ripoff.
Yeah. So this living a life of contribution,
Yeah.
uh, uh, again, which is when you create your purpose, your mission. When I work with people, it's always about the impact you're going to have on others.
Uh-huh.
It's never about what you're going to do. What's the impact you want to leave behind in every interaction? So
Interesting.
mine is that people's hearts are full and they have this connection to something called enlightenment.
In
Yeah.
a sense, you're defining your legacy. Your legacy is that people's hearts will be filled. And what was the second part?
All hearts are full, all beings are enlightened.
All beings are enlightened. Yeah. Well, you mentioned something earlier in part one about the practice. We talked about the kind of the awakening, and then the practices that you do in the community around you. You told me within the last few months when we talked that you engage in a practice with your wife Catherine, which has intrigued me ever since, and I wanted to talk about it more with you. Is I understand you every day you two start together by doing a crossword puzzle.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you talk about that as and why you do it and what has come of that? Yeah.
An insight. We can jump to relationships. Relationships are usually the most exciting when? In the
At the beginning. Yeah.
Why? Because you don't know them. And you're in that journey of questing, of discovery,
Yeah.
and you're on
Yeah.
your best behavior because you want them to stick around. And then the biggest, enemy of the great relationship is you figured your partner out. So now they're a thing with properties, and don't talk to them about this on Tuesdays and do this if you want that. And it's all transactional. So you got to have practices that keep life, keep your partner, on this discovery of who they are,
Uh-huh.
rather than there's this thing. So, we do this creative process together. We both like crossword puzzles, so we do it together. You
Uh-huh.
know, and we have espresso in bed together, and on most days, then we do a mindfulness practice together. We meditate for 20
Uh-huh.
minutes together.
Oh,
So
nice.
we start our days that way, and then we go and do our separate things, and then we have
Yeah,
other
but you've
practices.
had this
Yeah.
time together to not only to bond, but to discover each other again and anew.
And yeah, I made a promise which I don't keep, but it's an aspirational promise to never know who she is.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
So every day I have to discover her.
So you're always having to, in a sense, bust yourself from falling back into.
Otherwise, I'm going to relate to her like a thing.
Uh-huh. Well, that sounds like a great challenge in practice. And so who's the better crossword puzzle doer?
But we make a great team.
Yeah, and you find, and again, I'm asking this because I'm not good at crossword puzzles. I love to do them, but I always find myself looking, at the answer page to fill in the blanks when I get
Yeah,
stuck.
what I'm better in this sense. I persevere. So she'll get to a place where she'll want to give up
Yeah,
and look, and I'll say, no, we're not gonna. And so that's the thing I bring to it is what we ain't gonna look. We're gonna
you're
persevere.
going to actually get through it. I've recently become, like a lot of other people, addicted to Wordle, and it's become my daily little mental exercise. But every time I do it, I think, yeah, but Alan and Catherine are doing these
Oh,
complex
but
crossword puzzles.
no, now let's get to the real heart of the spiritual path, Wordle. So, and so again, community, Peter. So I'm in three different text streams
Uh-huh.
where at the end of the Wordle, you can share your score.
Oh,
So I do that with Catherine, my daughter Rose, her husband Jonathan, and our two granddaughters. So with us five people, and as soon as we're done, we share the score. Then we do it with two of Catherine's sisters, a brother-in-law, and six of us. And then there's a guy who breaks amazing bread, Robert Sampson, amazing bread,
uh-huh.
and we share our scores every day. So there's something about community,
Yeah.
you know, that,
So it's not just a mental exercise, but it's also community building.
yeah, exactly,
Mm,
exactly.
interesting. And I haven't made that leap yet because I've gotten everyone except one time I figured it out, get there sooner or later. But I know some people do it, they're on the clock. They want to do it in a certain amount of time, et cetera, et
I
cetera.
don't do any of that, but I'm like you. I'm 100. I've done it. Let's look and see. I did it. Did you do
I,
it today?
I did it today. And today I got there on the fourth. I found sometimes if you get all the first letters that you start with are wrong, it's sometimes more helpful than if you
Exactly.
get like one or two that are,
Yeah.
in the middle.
Yeah. So I got it on number 5 today, but I've been doing it for 91 times. 91 times so far. Yeah.
I had to reload, so I have lost track of how many. It says I've only done it 13 times, but I know I've done it about at
Yeah.
least 90 times too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I'm like you, 100%. But then, so that no one gets left out, when for the group, if you don't make it in the 6, we say, "Oh, great, you're in the asterisk club."
yes, yeah, right. Well, I like when you get to your last shot, number 6, and if you get it on the 6th one, then a little thing comes up that says "woo," like
Yeah, so
you made
we're
it.
gonna. Maybe the next book is Wordle as a metaphor for life.
There you go. Okay, and that's exactly because everything is a metaphor. But what I like about Wordle, being someone who's maybe has too short of an attention span for the really complex crossword puzzles, which typically how long do you guys spend on
But
a good puzzle?
each day gets harder. So Monday we like to do it in under 10
Are these
minutes.
all New York Times crosswords?
New York Times, yeah.
Yeah.
And by
So
Saturday, most people think Sunday's the hardest, but it isn't. It's the biggest.
uh,
Saturday is the hardest because it has the most white spaces, like
oh,
long words,
yeah, yeah.
So Saturday, if we can get it in under 30 minutes, we're happy.
Wow, 30 minutes is amazing to me
And
that you
then
could do it.
Sunday we like to do in under 45 just because of its size. Yeah.
But still, that's amazing in itself that you can get it
And we
done.
get better because the thing about crossword puzzles, Peter, is that once you know certain answers, they get repeated quite often.
Well, that's, I guess, one of the things that you have a frame of reference now that I don't have, and I keep thinking I'll get there one day if I do it, but I haven't become persistent enough
Yeah.
in doing them. I'll do them, sporadically. But that was one of the things I was going to ask you is, what is the trick to getting good at CrossFit? There's got to be some other little tricks that you
It's
have.
just persistence and knowing how your brain works. It's the same with Wordle. There's times where I just have to put it down
Yeah.
and then come back to it.
Yeah, I found that too. That if I get stuck like at level the third try, and if I come back an hour later, I'm looking like a new puzzle.
You see something you didn't see. You didn't see.
So how would you explain that from the standpoint of all your work with neurolinguistics and everything? What's going on there?
You're changing your focus. So in my view, when you're focused on an outcome, you can be obsessed and your focus becomes narrower. When you can be with it and breathe into it, get on your mat. If that's your ritual, take some deep breaths, take some centering, you open up and you're accessing different parts of your brain.
Well, that's funny that you said that because it makes sense, but also it triggered a memory of the very first day that you and I met in Boston at Route 1 when we were building it. It still was being built. Yes. And I showed up not knowing anybody there, and I had just received in the mail a package from a quote spiritual guru figure named Ram Dass, who many people, of course, we all know. Maybe this generation doesn't know, but I just gotten his first book.
Be Here Now.
Here Now, yeah, and then you also said and to be with. And I know that one of the gatherings that one of the communities that you were part of later on when we reconnected was you would call those gatherings a be with.
A be with, yeah. But also one of my initial things in 1966, I think, was a be in.
That's right. That's how the whole Summer of Love started, right, with be-ins. Well. Yeah. It's funny because, again, I said earlier, we were way ahead of our time. These ideas have been around. And of course, they existed before the 60s and the 70s, but they're coming back, right? Do you sense that right now we're in kind of a new cycle of
mindfulness is the rage.
Yeah.
Being present, being mindful is the rage. Having a purpose is the rage.
Yeah.
Having values that you live true to. Being there's so many folks who focused on wealth and then discovered that acquiring didn't equal being fulfilled.
Yeah.
So there's, techies going off for retreats where they're not allowed to get on their devices.
Yeah.
Just to be present. Again.
And that idea of be here now, being present. I mean, however you phrase it, there's so much. In fact, I would love to do another podcast with you and keep exploring these ideas. Maybe periodically get back and have sessions with the mentor here. My dad.
I would love to play. I love playing with you, Peter, in any opportunity I get.
When we get some of our pizza geniuses together there's a few that we have regularly. We call them the pizza yodis.
Yes.
And we refer them to maybe you could be my be here now yodi.
I'd love to meet your pizza peers.
All right. Well, this has been really fabulous. And of course, always wonderful connecting and reliving things, but also, talking about what can be. And so congratulations on all the work that you're continuing to do. We'll talk some more. I will hopefully see you when I get back out to Portland or one way or another, our paths will always cross.
I have another couple who's started a nonprofit called the World Bridge Foundation. And they they just moved to Asheville.
Oh, real close.
How far are you from Asheville?
2-hour drive.
Okay, good.
And I go out there at least once a year. So yeah, we should connect me with them. And then do you ever come out to speak with, work with them in person?
It's all been on Zoom so far.
So, the Zoom has changed the world, hasn't it?
Totally. And saved a lot on travel.
Exactly. But you also, and I'll end on this note, I know you did a lot of work in Israel. You were working, trying to build bridges. in
Yes.
Israel for peace and
Yes.
and harmony. And one of our friends from Route One Days,
Yes.
who I've also recently reconnected with, and you have as well.
Yep.
As we all went off in our different directions, he started out. He was one of the people that helped me find my Christian path, but then later he returned to his Jewish path and moved to Israel and became a rabbi. His name is now. It was Steve then. He's Shmaria now. Well, we're going to have him on. We're going to do a podcast with Shmaria, and we'll catch up. And then we're also talking about getting you and me and a few of the early Route One folks together for our own private little Zoom. Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll see you again. And thank all of you for joining us for this unique, Quest version of Pizza Quest. Oh, I got to ask you before I leave, since it's Pizza Quest, where do you go for pizza in Portland? Do you have a couple favorite go-tos?
I have lots of. One of them you introduced me to, a Pizza Shoals.
Pizza Shoals, yeah, and that's one of our Yodis. Brian is one of our Yodis on the regular basis.
And Ken's is phenomenal.
Ken's, yeah. So I understand Ken has retired now.
And just for a slice, there's Escape from New York Pizza on Northwest 23rd Avenue, and then there's another one that just opened 3 blocks from my house, Pizza Thief.
I haven't. Well, when I come to Portland, we'll have to check out some of these places I haven't been to. I want to meet. We'll converge on a Pizza Quest while we continue to talk about the quest.
Exactly. That's great.
Thanks so much, Alan. Love you. See you soon.
Love you too.